The firestorm over the UK government's attempt to take new powers that would abrogate international treaties gets ever stronger. Today, the bill was published. It's a bill that would allow ministers to disapply parts of Northern Ireland's protocol. Boris Johnson told Parliament he's defending the UK's interests.
We need a legal safety net to protect our country against extreme or irrational interpretations of the protocol, which could lead to a border down the Irish Sea in a way that I believe, and I think members around the House believe, would be prejudicial to the interests of the Good Friday Agreement and prejudicial to the interests of peace in our country.
So this is what the fuss is all about, the new bill on the customs union. It's a new legislation. Clause 45 openly flouts international law. It reads, the following have effect notwithstanding any relevant international or domestic law with which they may be incompatible or inconsistent. The Brexit deal effectively puts customs borders across the Irish Sea, and breaking that deal threatens reviving the hard Irish border, even though everybody says they don't want a border to break up the island of Ireland. With me is the Taoiseach Micheál Martin, who joins me from Dublin. And you spoke to the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. I know what you were going to say. You were going to make clear your displeasure at this move. Did the Prime Minister say anything that put your mind at rest?
Well, I did more than just articulate my displeasure. I pointed out that this fundamentally undermines an international treaty and indeed the Northern Ireland Protocol, which the British government had signed up to, had agreed and had passed through their own parliament last year. And it's a very serious issue for not just Ireland, but indeed for the European Union. It erodes trust in the relationship and upon which all negotiations rests and is founded. And I think it creates a new tension. And also, contrary to what the Prime Minister said in Parliament today, it also damages the politics of Northern Ireland and creates division. Now, the Prime Minister, and I don't want to go through the phone call that I had with the Prime Minister, because phone calls and conversations between leaders are confidential, but thrust of the Prime Minister's position is that he doesn't want to do anything to undermine the obligations placed on the United Kingdom to fulfil the essence of the withdrawal treaty and the Northern Ireland Protocol. But of course, the problem is that the clause that you've just read out and other clauses run counter to those reassurances. In our view, the correct place to discuss this was the joint committee established by the agreement, the withdrawal agreement, where issues pertaining to the protocol were to be discussed.
Well, they obviously decided not to do that. They've done what they've done. They've seen the hue and cry. And what are you going to do about it? At the end of the day, I mean, the British say it's in back channels, it's a negotiating strategy. These are hard negotiations. But what are you going to do about it?
Well, fundamentally, these negotiations are between the European Union and the United Kingdom. We're with the European Union, and I'm in close liaison and contact with the President of the European Commission and with the negotiating task force. And I can tell you that Europe is taking this very seriously. And this is no time for game playing. This is no time for negotiating strategies. We're already late in the day in terms of the Brexit negotiations. What is required is a will to negotiate a sensible free trade agreement with no tariffs and with no quotas. This kind of stuff, unilateral action, introducing legislation in Parliament, runs counter, in my view, to achieving a sensible and sane outcome to what is very important to the people of Ireland, to the people of the United Kingdom, and indeed the European Union. Because ultimately this is about protecting jobs, protecting economies, and they expect our leaders to be sensible about it and to get on with meaningful negotiations on the essence of a free trade deal.
Where were you when you heard about this? Were you shocked? Did one or two strong words emanate from you, Taoiseach?
Well, I think this, as I said in the Irish Parliament today to Dáil, this represented a new departure, particularly when you're the US Secretary of State yesterday, announcing in Parliament, admitting in Parliament that yes, this is breaking international law. And it's moving away from the norms of diplomacy and conduct between nations and between countries. And it's serious from that perspective. And I was very, very taken back by it. And also annoyed and angry at the fact that there was no heads up. There was none of the normal engagement that one would expect from countries involved in a negotiation process.
Particularly where you share a common travel area. Let's talk about COVID. Having had a good, I mean, to put it in simplistic terms, having had a good run at it earlier in the session, in the pandemic, things are now out of control, or at least heading that way in Ireland. How concerned are you? I know here in the UK, the reopening, where I am tonight, the reopening schools, colleges, universities has led to youngsters being perhaps more free and easier than they should. Is that your experience? And do you anticipate more lockdowns?
First of all, the situation is not out of control at all in Ireland. We are seeing an increase in numbers. We are concerned about the increase in numbers in Dublin and in Limerick. We've already had some local severe restrictions, not quite lockdowns, in 3 counties some weeks ago. And we had them for 3 weeks, and they proved to be very effective in bringing back down the numbers and stabilising them. And in addition to that, we've significantly ramped up our testing, and we're serially testing our nursing homes and meat plants and the direct provision centres. So on Tuesday next, we will be publishing a national framework which will govern how we will live with COVID over the next 6 months. And that will enable people to understand when various levels of responses will be triggered in terms of extra restrictions being placed or otherwise.
Taoiseach, finally, some are saying that yours has been one of the most hapless, in sense, administrations, in the sense that there has been one issue after another. Most recently, Golfgate, you've lost 2 ministers, you've now got Brexit issues with the British government playing ducks and drakes with an important withdrawal agreement. Do you feel that you've had a less than auspicious start as Taoiseach?
Not at all. In fact, you mentioned schools. We just had a very, very successful, effective and well-resourced return to schools. Over 1 million back in our schools in the middle of a global pandemic through hard work, focus and diligence. And in July, we published and have enacted quite a considerable amount of it, a stimulus program for the economy through a wage subsidy initiative and supports and interventions for business that has and will continue to protect jobs. We've also worked successfully in terms of the European Council, where for the first time ever the European Council, with Ireland's strong active support, arrived at a collective agreement in terms of borrowing to deal and enable member states to deal with the pandemic. And in Northern Ireland, may I say, the first North-South Ministerial Council was held in over 3.5 years, and I've developed good relations with the First Minister and Deputy First Minister of Northern Ireland. So on the substance of government, this has been a significant number of months in terms of milestones achieved, legislative output, and in terms of the issues that I've outlined to you there.
Right, but when you lost Phil Hogan as the Trade Commissioner, admittedly, Mairead McGuinness has got an important portfolio in financial services, but you did lose an important Irish voice in the European Commission in that sense. And arguably the whole Golfgate just widened a gap that's perceived, not just in Ireland, I'll give you, the UK had it with Dom Cummings, between elites and people who feel there's one rule for one for the other.
Except that in Ireland, there's one fundamental difference. People were held accountable in this jurisdiction. It was very regrettable what happened. It was wrong what happened. And a senior cabinet minister resigned very, very quickly. To be fair to him, he didn't hang, he understood the gravity of this, such was the public outrage and anger at the time at what was a breach of the COVID guidance that everybody else was observing, and given all the sacrifices that people have made. And in terms of the 6 senators lost their party whips as a result of this.
Right.
And as you pointed out, the European Commissioner resigned also through a number of issues relating to that event and the subsequent narratives around the regulations and the guidance. That was regrettable. I think Phil Hogan was a very distinguished European Union Commissioner and held a very distinguished portfolio. But the entire episode demonstrates that in Ireland, actually, public officials, irrespective of rank, were held to account in terms of the issues involved.
Right. Taoiseach, I was just thinking, we last spoke in Davos, beginning of the year. I mean, who could have thought it? When you look back then, now, and the future that you've got to face between now and Christmas, what does your gut tell you?
My gut tells me that we will get through COVID, but it will be very challenging. And it's proving to be a much longer term journey than people might have anticipated. That's why we're producing our plan next Tuesday, to take that into account. I think we've got to be resilient. We've got to stick with this. And we've also got to avoid, if you like, as much tensions and acrimony that undoubtedly will arise from time to time. COVID is the dominant issue, in my view, over the next 12 months. Obviously, we have the Brexit issue on top of that, and that's why we need to resolve Brexit, because we don't need to impose another shock on top of our respective peoples in addition to COVID-19. All our energies and resources have to go fundamentally to prioritising COVID-19 in health, economy, and quality of life generally for people.
Taoiseach, thank you. Kind of you to give us time tonight, busy days, and we're very grateful for you joining us tonight on Quest Meets Business. We'll talk more, hopefully, before the end of the year.